Chapter 26, Face Off. Stop right there, the old man shouted. Once again, my impulsive urges got us into a troubling predicament. Mike raised his hands above his head, and I did the same, both of us motionless in fear. My breathing became scorched and shaky. The bright morning sun cast a shadow over the two older gentlemen. It appeared they were wearing uniforms. They stepped toward us with the rifle still aiming at our chests. Keep your hands where we can see them, the man to the right of the wolf demanded. The coarse, deep voice sounded familiar. The closer they got, the more I panicked. I wanted to turn around and dash away as fast as I could and not look back. We'd come so far just to get caught by Dappa. My eyes adjusted, and the gray-haired man beside the wolf lowered his weapon. I blinked a few more times. Amber, the taller man said my name. The other man with long gray hair and a scruffy beard lowered his rifle. Mike? My eyes widened with surprise. Pop-Up? I shouted. Pap? Mike questioned. Both of our supposedly dead grandpas standing together in sap uniforms. I jumped into my Pop-Pop's arms and squeezed so hard. Mike embraced his grandfather, Larry Galanis. Mike had lost his grandpa at age 7, as I had. He had been told his grandfather died during the war when he served in the military. I thought you were dead, I asked. I should have been after the fall. He petted the wolf's thick fur. Thor pulled me out of the water. He saved me. Why didn't you come home? He ignored my question. Mike had his questions for his own grandfather. Grandma said you died overseas during the war. Mr. Galanis nodded. I know. It's a long story, which we'll fill you both in on later. We have to go before the rest of the trackers show up. Your team is safe inside the cave. We quickly moved toward the cave. Once inside, the temperature dropped by 20 degrees. With my clothes still wet from the water, I shivered with goosebumps. My grandfather took off his jacket and handed it to me. Thank you, I said. He handed me a flashlight. Take this. We continued walking deeper into the dark cave that smelled like a damp, unfinished basement. The walls were a unique brownish-red color with water dripping down in some spots. Up ahead were the sounds of people chatting. Amber, you're alive, Evan shouted. He gave me an enormous hug. And you're wet. I chuckled. Yeah, I went for a swim. I smacked his shoulder playfully. Why didn't you tell me our grandparents were alive? Sam asked me not to, Evan claimed. My grandfather stepped forward. I wanted to tell you myself, under better circumstances, of course. Zeke, Danny, Evan, and Max were all here and alive. Several others were standing with our crew. A young man with long, curly blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail stepped forward. He wore a SAP uniform and held a gun in his hand. I want you to meet Scotty, team leader of Camp West, Grandpa introduced. Mike hugged Scotty. It's so good to see you, bud. I gave him a big squeeze. You know each other? My grandfather asked. I nodded. The three of us worked together at the local post office back home. After high school, he moved and we lost contact. I faced Scotty. I had no idea you were a star child. I didn't either until after he graduated, Scotty declared. That's when I had my awakening. Scotty handed Mike a gun. He opened his hand as we all focused on what he was about to show us. A ball of fire emerged from the palm of his hand and it lit up the room. Not only am I an indigo, but I can make fire and throw it. That is really cool, I shouted. He closed his fists and the fire dissipated. They weren't so cool when the awakening started. That's why Evan recruited me. Once he helped me manage my powers, he asked me to lead Camp West. Been here ever since, but I hear you're a healer. Yes, I replied. Once the union occurred, Mike was given my healing powers. It has helped us along this intense journey. I always figured you two would end up together. Just didn't think it would take years for it to happen. I'm happy for you both. Mike chatted with Scotty and Mr. Galanis while I pulled my grandpa aside. Many questions ran through my head. What exactly happened the day of the fall? I asked. He took a deep breath and sighed, keeping one hand on his waist and the other holding the gun. Your Nan and I were on a hike, not far from here. I saw something shining on the pathway. My curiosity got the best of me. I shouldn't have picked it up, but I felt like it was calling me. The colors of the stone had me in a trance from its beauty, and then he paused. I reached deep into my pocket and pulled out the amber my Nana given to me. So the story's true. His eyes widened with shock. He took it from my hand and stared. How did you get this? He asked. Nana brought it back from the trip. He continued to stare at the amber. I wanted to tap into his thoughts to see what had happened that day. I asked the same question as earlier. Why didn't you come home? Just before he was about to speak, the sounds of trackers echoed through the cave. Trackers, we need to move now, Mr. Gallinus insisted. The sooner we get these kids to the Tree of Knowing, the sooner this all ends. Jasper will not stop until every Star Child is dead and Amber's baby is in his possession. Agreed. We gotta keep moving, Scotty said. This way. We hustled through the damp and dark cavern with only a few flashlights guiding our pathway. An exit was approaching, but suddenly everyone came to a halt. What is it? Why did we stop? I asked. They all turned around as if they'd heard something before I could. The silent, blank expressions on their faces were about to spike my fear. Amber. An all too familiar voice shouted my name from outside the cave. I cringed every time he spoke. Amber, Jasper shouted. I know you're in there. The chase is over. It's time to come home with me. I wasn't waiting here for another second. No more people needed to die. This needed to end now. Mike tapped into my thoughts and heard what I was thinking. Amber, do nothing irrational, he said in his thoughts. But we had no choice. Cornered in a cave. Scotty and his men aiming the guns down the dark pathway we came from, trackers echoing through the tunnels, and now Jasper and his crew standing outside, waiting to kill my people and take me hostage. I stepped toward the opening and Mike grabbed my arm. I'm not letting you go out there, he demanded. I don't have a choice, Mike. He's going to have you all killed. My grandpa stepped forward. Amber, I just got you back in my life. We aren't handing you over to Jasper. Our focus is getting you to the tree. I was building up inside with anger. I slammed the flashlight on the ground. Enough about this tree, I snapped as I flailed my arms. I'm tired of running. My powers are exhausted, and Star Children are dying. When is enough enough? Everyone was staring at me in silence as the echoes of the tracker's footsteps seemed to be getting louder. I took off my grandfather's jacket and handed it back to him. I took a deep breath inside. Look, I'm giving him what he wants. Me. Amber, Mike shouted. This isn't you being a hero. This is suicide. Once he has your baby, he's going to kill you. I'm done fighting with him. He won. No, Mike insisted. This is our fight as much as yours. Everyone nodded while Mike tucked his gun in the back of his pants, reaching for my hand. I still have fight in me, and I know you do too. Let's go out there together. Together, Evan said with his hand slightly gripping his gun. Together, Zeke spoke up, followed by the rest repeating the words. Thor brushed up against my left side. I petted his long, thick fur. A relaxed feeling swept through me. They were probably right. We need to do this together. It was safer if we fight as a team. Okay, I agreed. A small smile perked on Mike's face. I rubbed my necklace for luck. Mike and I led the team out of the cave. The warmth of the air hit my face, and the sun peeking through the trees burned my light-colored eyes. It took a few seconds for my eyes to adjust. Jasper stood roughly 40 feet away with about 15 trackers, all pointing guns in our direction. Wondering how quickly he got here, I guess that with the power of mind control, he could convince any pilot to fly him anywhere he wanted. He was wearing a white button-up dress shirt with his sleeves rolled up, black slacks and dress shoes. Unusual choice of clothing for a battle, but this seemed to be his normal attire for any circumstances. We walked closer toward them as my crew had guns pointing directly at their heads, lining up one by one in a row, Mike and Zeke on my right, Pop-Up and Thor on my left. I glanced down the row to see Mike's Pat missing, along with a few others from the Camp West team. Oh, here come her puppets, Jasper chuckled. I gave him a hard stare. See, that's the difference between you and me, Jasper. I don't have to force mind control on my team. They choose to fight for me. The team awaited guidance from me. I stared at Jasper, filled with rage, thinking about what to do next. I wanted to shout, the baby isn't yours. You could leave now, but that may only make things worse. Tell your people to drop their guns, Jasper demanded. No, you drop yours. I yelled back, trying to stay strong, keeping my fear inside from exploding. How did I get out of this one? Think, Amber, think. I closed my eyes and called for Electra for her strength, allowing my body to fill with energy. Mike heard my thoughts. He grabbed my right hand and we connected with our energy. Jasper shouted, I'm done with these games. Shoot them and bring me Amber. Just before all hell broke loose, our eyes glowed bright purple. Time froze for a split second. I raised my left hand as Mike raised his right. The energy vibrated as it flowed through our bodies to our hands. Once enough energy was cast, lightning struck in my eyes, sending sparks through our hands. Time restarted, and a huge blast burst through the air, bigger than anything we have ever tried. Jasper ducked down and grabbed a root on the ground. The rest of the trackers were hit by the blast of energy and all fell backwards. The amount of energy used to create this blast drained me. What little strength I had left could barely keep my leg muscles from collapsing. Mike was just as drained as I was. Jasper's eyes widened with surprise as he stood up. Either he was astounded by the purple bolts or he was unsettled by the great vitality of our combined powers. His eyes turned red, and as he went to step in my direction, a loud explosion happened just off to our right, causing everyone to fall to the ground. Mike and I lost connection. Several smoke bombs rolled in, making it difficult to see, almost as bad as the fog from earlier. What was happening? I tried to stand, but my legs were too weak. I struggled to hear after the loud eruption. Zeke pulled me behind a fallen tree log. Everyone coughed and gunshots fired. My hearing was slowly returning. Trackers fought sat. Mike, where's Mike? I shouted. Zeke was about to say something to me, but out of nowhere, a tracker swung a knife at him. Watch out, I shouted. Zeke blocked the man's swing, grabbed his arm to pull toward the ground, and punched his head. I scrambled for a way to help Zeke as the two continued to brawl. I squinted through the smoke and coughed, and I breathed in the intense fumes. Where was Mike? Why did I keep losing him? The smoke was dissipating into the air. I attempted to regain balance to my drained body, but something grabbed me from behind, throwing me on my back. Pain shot through me from the slamming. I looked up, and to my surprise, it wasn't a tracker. It was Jasper. His red eyes beamed with anger. Before I could get up, he leaped on top of me, pinned me to the ground, wrapping both of his hands around my neck. Just like in my dream, I was gasping for air, trying to pull his hard grip off my throat. Tell me who you are, Jasper demanded. I saw the purple in your eyes. He released enough for me to gasp one more word. Amber. This only made him rage with more aggression. All this time, I thought he knew who my soul was. He had no clue my soul was Electra. His eyes glowed a brighter red and squeezed my throat again. He repeated the same question as I didn't respond, still trying to pull his hands off, but I was too weak from the earlier episode. Who are you? He yelled. His mind control didn't work on me. Immediately I began to feel what he was feeling. The evil inside him had consumed every shred of humanity left in his body. The evil was Orion, and he had complete control over Jasper. Trying to find any ounce of energy left to get me out of this crisis. Fear kicked in, air grew thinner. I pulled as hard as I could to release his forceful grip. Thoughts of dying and not eating my baby flooded my mind, never having the chance to meet the little one who could be my light, my sense of security, the love I needed to strengthen my fears. My eyes turned purple, and suddenly I was no longer in the woods. I saw a little girl swinging on a swing with a little boy pushing from behind. To my right stood Jasper. I wanted to sprint away, but I couldn't. This was a memory. We both were being forced to watch it together. I knew who the children were. The little girl was Electra, and the young boy was Orion, not a day over 10, innocent children playing together, enjoying their friendship. As we stood there and watched what happened next, Jasper put his head down, knowing what terrible thing was to come. Orion's uncle walked over to the young Orion and grabbed his arm, dragging him away as Electra stared in fear. The uncle began to beat him over and over. Electra was crying, yelling at him to stop. I couldn't bear watching anymore. Suddenly a white light appeared, and we were back in the woods. I know who you are, Jasper said as he released the grip of my throat and his red eyes returned to blue. We stared silently at each other, both paralyzed. Then out of nowhere, my grandpa tackled him like a linebacker, and they both fell hard to the ground. Jasper threw a punch at my grandfather, hitting him hard in the ribs. While I was still trying to recover from my loss of air and having exhausted my energy from the blast, I was no help in the fight. Jasper pulled a knife out of his sock and swung at my grandpa, stabbing him in the leg, allowing Jasper to stand up. Thor lunged at him, but Jasper's red eyes glowed and the wolf laid on the ground, unable to move. This gave Jasper a chance to hurry away. No, I shouted, but only a whisper came out. I climbed over to my grandpa. He yanked the knife out of his leg and screeched in agony, placing my hands over the wound to heal him from his pain. I didn't have enough energy. He pulled out a handkerchief from his pocket and began to wrap it around the wound. Thor came over, licking his face. I'm good, bud, Pop-Up said while petting his head. The gunshots were no longer echoing through the air, and the smoke had cleared up. Mike came dashing over to help me lift my grandfather to his feet. Many dead trackers were sprawled across the ground. The rest scattered with Jasper. Our crew gathered around. It seemed like we all had survived this battle. Scotty came over to relieve me from holding my grandpa up. Once again, he got away, I said. I thought I was strong enough to take him. I'm sorry. I failed you all. You didn't fail us, Amber, Evan assured me. What was the explosion? I asked. Across the way was Mike's grandfather approaching us. He laughed. I knew that dynamite would come in handy someday. Smoke was coming from off in a distance. He blew up one of the tracker's SUVs. It was good timing, as I didn't know if I had any more energy left to fight. Suddenly, a gunshot went off, and something completely unexpected happened. A bullet penetrated straight through Mr. Galanis' head. His body fell lifeless to the ground as my heart instantly felt pain. No, Mike shouted as he reached for his grandfather's body. Everything from this moment on seemed slow motion. A tracker who appeared to be dead on the ground was not. But it wasn't just any tracker. It was the director, the Dappa asshole who captured me earlier this week. Anger hit me instantly. Evan kicked the gun out of his hand. With no hesitation, I picked up the gun, and the director smiled at me, knowing his life had ended. I pulled the trigger, and his body fell over. Mike held his grandpa's body, astonished that the courage man who just saved our lives was now lying in a puddle of blood. How did this keep happening? Tears formed in his eyes as he knelt in silence. My heart hurt for him. He just got back, my eyes filled with water, burning my vision. He began a plaintive cry. I never felt such pain from him before. I knelt beside Mike, knowing no words I said were going to bring back his Pat. Thor laid beside him, whimpering, licking his lifeless hand and trying to lift it with his nose. Silence filled the air for 10 minutes. Finally, I spoke. Let's give him a proper burial. He saved us so we could live another day. That will never be forgotten, I said softly. Mike looked into my eyes and nodded. Let's get him back to camp, Scotty said. Our camp is surrounded by enchanted datura flowers we planted from the Tree of Knowing. Its shield provides invisibility to those who aren't star children. We should be safe from Jasper there. Evan stepped forward. I would double our guards on duty. He is using our kind to find the camps. Jasper may have gotten away and another life had been lost, but I wasn't giving up. I planned on finding this tree to help me serve justice, to find the right way to complete my destiny so another life would not be taken. This lost battle didn't make me weak. It made me stronger than ever. I wasn't only Amber, but I was Elektra, and our fight wasn't over.